going on, family? How's everybody doing? Get your libations, get whatever you're going to need for the evening. Get whatever you're going to need, because I'm going to need something. So get whatever you are going to need. What's going on here? We have to have a conversation, fam, as always. So please hit that like button. Please do whatever you have to do. We're going to talk a little bit about a lot of stuff. We're going to talk about home ownership. We're going to talk about Kamala. But first, let's do what we always do, family. Let's get the work in. Let's get the stuff that we got to get in. So please join us August the 1st. Well, we will be talking about how the Irish became white. We will be having that conversation. Please join us for the conversation August the 1st. So we will have a Monday show and a Wednesday show and an August the 1st show where we talk about how the Irish became white. It's a very interesting thing that they did and how they accessed it. So we will be having that conversation. Also, please hit that like button. Please hit that subscribe button. If you have not done it already, I appreciate it. Please go to subscribetobrown.com. Cost you no money just to give me your email address. I don't spam anybody. I don't do anything to anyone for the most part. Also, if you want to donate, you can go to donatebrown.com. You can go to patreon.com/ycarnell. You can do all of those things. So fam, please, we have to have a conversation. I'm going to intro it. Because something very interesting happened. We saw Kamala Harris introduce a bill. Let's just give everything some background about homeownership, $100 billion plan, investment in minority, especially black communities and redline communities. And she said that this is the thing that we need, and she announced it at the Essence Festival, and the ladies went wild. Kamala's going to pay for our down payments on our houses, on our homes, and up to $25,000. That's what she said that she's going to do. And so we have to stop, because what is happening? Let's understand what's happening, right? Because I'm going to go to a guest in a minute who I hope will be able to explain some of this better than I. But let's go to what is happening. What is happening is that we have pushed for ADOS agenda. We have pushed for a black agenda, and people are responding. Now, the second part is, how do we assess what you're bringing? How do we tell whether or not what you're bringing is actually a black agenda, or whether this is a scam, or whether this is not good enough, or whether it just doesn't measure up, or goes a little bit short, but push this way or push this way? How do we assess these things? That's very important. So I just want to do a little background. I just want to talk a little bit about what for those of you who didn't see it, I just want to give you all a little backdrop to understand what Kamala did, what happened. Speaking at the 25th annual Essence Festival, Senator Kamala Harris announced her plan to close the racial homeownership gap that has historically prevented minority families from purchasing homes. Harris's proposal, would allocate $100 billion in down payment and closing cost assistance to families living in historically redlined communities. Here's what she said. A typical black family has just $10 of wealth for every $100 held by a white family, Harris said. So we must right that wrong. And after generations of discrimination, give black families a real shot at home ownership. Historically, one of the most powerful drivers of wealth. Put a pin in that. We're going to come back to this thing about being a driver of wealth. Put a pin in it. We're coming back to it. Make a note. Additionally, Harris's plan includes increased funding to provide financial literacy education to first-time homebuyers, and will strengthen fair housing enforcement and anti-discrimination lending laws with the aim of updating the Home Mortgage Disclosure Act to prevent redlining. Harris also wants to amend the Fair Credit Reporting Act to include payment history of rent, utility bills, phone bills in the calculation of credit scores. So for those of you who are not up to date, we hope that was enough to give you a little bit of a little crib sheet work right there, so you understand what is being proposed. Now I want to bring in a guest to kind of for those of you who have been at the Angela Project, you have met Josh Poe. He is an urban planner. He's an activist. He's talked a lot about he's talked a lot about and has studied Redline, especially in Louisville. And I want to talk to him about this because I want to begin to understand, not just because I'm not an expert here. I know what I think I know, but I want to talk to Josh Poe about what this means in terms of what he saw. So, Josh, are you there with me?
Yes. Hey, Yvette, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. How about you?
Doing good. Thanks for having me on the show.
No problem. No problem. You know, you're always a friend of the show, and I appreciate you coming on, taking time out of your night to come on and talk about this. But I want to kind of, you know, I know you from the Angela Project, and I know your presentations about redlining and the building of communities, and how the building of communities locks communities in and locks communities out, right? And that's what we talk about a lot. So when you look at Kamala's plan, one of the first things that I want to kind of pose to you in terms of our conversation, I want to ask you, we have to kind of address the backdrop, right, of this. There's this general assumption that we have that owning a home in and of itself, before we get to the whether or not it accrues, like owning a home in and of itself is something that is attainable and accrues wealth. And so if you could speak to that, especially you're talking about you in Louisville and what you've seen in Louisville in terms of black poverty there and access to home ownership, if you could just frame that for us in terms of, are we understanding this right? Is that it? If you are a black person, because I understand that the median in Louisville is like the income is like $34,000 or something in that range. So is that?
Yes, it's about 34. It's about 34,000, but that's pretty much the median black income, household income in most of the South and Midwest. That's what you find in St. Louis, Birmingham, Nashville. That's across the board.
Okay. Now, in terms of affordability, when you're looking to buy into a home, in terms of what home ownership is supposed to mean, in terms of when you're looking to buy a home, in terms of accumulation of wealth, with that level of income, is it possible to do that? And you can just speak freely, just speak on what you know.
Well, there are a couple of things wrong with the plan. So there's two. I looked over the plan. And I did some research today. There's the plan itself, and then there's the idea of wealth creation. Okay. So let's start with, there are a couple of things wrong with this idea that a home creates wealth in and of itself, and there's also the problem with not contextualizing the relationship between black ownership and white home ownership. So you've got to you've really got to nail down the racist nature of real estate and the racist nature of capitalism. Okay. And we've done a good job in this country in the last 3 years of exposing redlining, but we've done a terrible job of explaining redlining. And what we've kind of done, Yvette, is we've kind of done a shallow dive into redlining without really, seeing it as a larger structural issue and really explaining that the nature of racism and capitalism. So I'm going to go back just for a second, just to kind of explain this, because what we have in this country, we still have de facto racial zoning. Right? We abolished racial zoning by law, but what you get in capitalism is, once you pass a law, you get all these loopholes, and the same, outcomes get recreated. So we still have racial zoning, and what that means is, in 1924, the Hoover Commission on Zoning decided at the federal level that black people would be a threat to property values. And since property values are linked to wealth creation, that essentially means that the physical space occupied by a black person is not only a threat to their own ability to create wealth, but it's a threat to anyone in proximity to them. So what that means spatially is that black people don't really occupy the same space as wealth. They're really, like you say, and Antonio said, a contagion to wealth creation. Now what that means is, so that's 1924, that's codified by the federal government. By the time we get to redlining, redline neighborhoods, neighborhoods that receive the highest ranking in those redlining maps were neighborhoods best equipped to exclude black people. So white wealth was contingent upon the ability to exclude black people. So what we've done is, now we go back and we look at the New Deal and we focus in on the New Deal and we say, okay, white people gained wealth through homeownership. Now let's get black people homeownership without really looking at those larger structures in place. And it's a terrible way of thinking about it because, first of all, we don't take in the context of the New Deal. We don't take in the context that we completely altered our entire society to create a white middle class, to assimilate an entire group into whiteness, into a middle class structure, and then really redesigned our world with massive investment around suburbanization, interstate highways. So this whole idea of wealth creation through homeownership, we're not operating in the same context today, right?
Yeah.
So that's really based on this idea that homeownership has an asset to wealth creation is not specified to what you mean by wealth. So Kamala's plan, what it could do is it could create some stability for, black median household income, say at 60,000, at 50,000, and it could have benefits there. But let's look at that for a second. Let's say her plan works for that income group, and they're able to buy a home for say 140, 150, and this is all based on the notion that property values will continue to increase,
okay,
which they actually won't as long as they're black owned. And let's say someone makes, best case scenario, they accrue 80,000 out of that. For Gen X and below, most likely you're going to use that money to pay off student loan debt. You're going to use that money to pay off credit card debt, which we could say that's stabilizing. But there again, that's not the same thing as wealth creation. So really this conversation, and that doesn't even touch black median incomes below 50K, which is where most black people reside, right?
Yeah.
So we're really talking about it's really a conversation about affordability. It's not really a conversation about wealth creation, because wealth means something very specific. And there's an interesting map, there's an interesting interactive map put out by the New York Public Radio, WNYC. And it's an interactive map of median household incomes across the country. And if you look at that map and you zoom in on those cities, you'll find the dark red areas in that map are census tracts below 15K, right? That's median household income, 15,000 a year. And you see those in every city in the country. You see those in LA, you see them in Nashville, you see them in Dayton, Ohio, Milwaukee. Those are black neighborhoods below 15K. And what we're getting right now, and Kamala's plan is really, keep in mind, it's a place-based initiative, right? It's not people-based. It's for formerly redlined areas, not formerly redlined people.
Okay.
Place-based initiatives don't challenge the social and political forces that create poverty. So as gentrification moves into these neighborhoods, what we're seeing is, if you make under 15K, a $30 increase in rent is a challenge. What we're seeing is rents increase by $200 and $300 a month, which is devastating. So, Noam Chomsky talks about this. It's sort of, we have this conversation nationally, and it's sort of a fairy tale economy, right? And that's what Kamala's plan reminds me of, that we live in a sort of fairy tale economy where everybody's just middle class and you can buy a home and accumulate wealth, when the real conversation we should be having is, how do we protect massive amounts of homelessness among the black community in the next 10 years? So we're so far off base with this conversation.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's kind of like, when you talk about blacks being a contagion, we talk about it being a contagion to wealth, right? A contagion to our own wealth and white wealth. The government made black failure dominate over white success after black bodies were containers of wealth during slavery. So when you flesh that out, because what happens is, we were once like these containers of wealth and wealth creation, and then we became like contagions and contaminants. And that kind of goes to what you just said in the sense of wealth creation, because it's not just about see when you become contagious to wealth, what you just say is that like because we're black people live around other black people, our communities are not going to accrue wealth, because we destroy our own wealth because we're black and the government did that. And we destroy white wealth too, and the government did that. We've talked about de jure and all those the two different kinds of segregation. We talked about that. But then you talk about also affordability. So I want you to talk to me a little bit about the ability to even kind of, Kamala says up to 25,000, right? So up to 25 doesn't mean you get 25. That's not what that means. But even if you do, if you're talking about living in the kind of neighborhood that is going to accumulate wealth, you're not talking about living in our neighborhoods. You're talking about, aren't you talking about living somewhere where it's going to be at least $150,000 to $200,000 to get that home? Is that even enough? Is that even enough to qualify for a home? Because you might have a home that's $60,000 or $70,000, right? Is that even enough for that?
It's not enough. And what happened after the crash of '08 is that we put, the federal government put regulation in place to protect people from predatory subprime lending. So if you're making 50, 60K, the banks aren't really they don't want to make loans but under 120. They don't want to make loans. They want to, to protect people. There's a reason we have debt to income ratios, is to protect people from that. So they're not qualifying. Now, what I see Kamala's plan doing is sort of eliminating those protections under Dodd-Frank to start subprime lending up all over again. Right, and sort of entice people. It's sort of like that 25K is sort of an enticement into a debt that you really can't afford, and it sort of restarts the subprime lending all over again, which is what the World Bank and the IMF really wants to happen. 20 years ago in the 90s, the World Bank published a document called Housing Enabling Markets to Work, and it was just basically the basic neoliberal model of you reduce public expenditures and then you withdraw the state from areas where the market can step in. Now, public expenditures didn't decrease in that model. They just shifted as subsidies to higher incomes through tax exemptions for home purchases. Keep in mind, Trump did away with the mortgage interest deduction. So that was one of the main benefits of homeownership, right? So that's gone. That's over with. And so not only is there an affordability gap, even if we could do the gap financing, even if we could get people those home loans, for one thing, if you're making 50K, if you're making 60K, and you fall behind on a payment, it's a wrap. It's over, right?
Yeah.
But what we know is like the financial markets benefited from that process. They benefited from foreclosures. They benefited from the market crash, which was devastating to black families. What this is it's sort of part of that neoliberal model of aggressive income extractions. And what they've done is, this is a global phenomenon, really. They've made rent so high that there are really no options for poor people. So now that home ownership is really a way to escape the rental market and escape the predatory eviction process that poor people are experiencing in the country. And in that sense, it's just sort of this hijacked system. So, yes, you're right. There's an affordability issue. So, and what the question is not really, do people build wealth from this? Because most of the black people I know in Louisville have not gained wealth through homeownership. Their homes are worth $10,000 less than they were 15 years ago, despite making improvements in them. So, and that's where we don't contextualize that relationship between race and real estate. Those homes don't gain property value until white people move into their neighborhood, right? That's when so then it's not a matter of black people gaining wealth through that home. The question then is, can I hold on to this home as prices increase outside of my affordability range?
Well, something just hit me while you were talking. What it really sounds like in terms of, you were talking about, the subprime and all of that. It sounds to me like what's happening is that during the recession, we lost our homes. A lot of us got foreclosed on. A lot of black people, a lot of ADOS people, we got foreclosed on. It sounds to me like they took our foreclosed homes and now they're trying to give them back to us as reparations or sell them back to us at a rate that we can't afford. And they're saying, we might sell your home, a home that's not going to even accrue any value. And let me just say this before I go on, let me just point this out. About when the median house, where Kamala was DA in San Francisco. San Francisco's median house price rose by $205,000 in the first half of 2018, according to a mid-year report by real estate agency Paragon. The swell is one of the city's biggest in its history. The rise in median home value now makes the average price for a house in the city a whopping $1.62 million. Okay, so if that's where you from, Kamala, like I'm just gonna say this is 1 and you were there when it became 1.62 million. Understand that we got a lot of areas like this. We're gonna go back to Louisville, but we're gonna talk about that too because 25,000 gets you nothing, and you were there when all of that happened. You did that, Kamala. That's you. Now let's go back to Louisville. What you're talking about, Josh, is extreme poverty. When we talk about the middle black family being worth $1,700, that's extreme poverty. Extreme poverty means that you are servicing debt all the time. You're trying to keep your head above water. What that means is that you don't have the money to put aside. See, in order to put money aside, even for if you're going to buy into a property that's going to accrue, it's not going to be black, first of all. But the second thing is you have to have money to put aside for this. We're extreme poverty people. So what you're looking at is that a bill that's not designed to help extreme poverty people. If you're not designing something to help people who are these working poor and extreme poverty, like working poor, the middle black family, 1,700, how then are we going to say that this is a bill designed to kind of be our reparations? Because I want to go through some of the stuff that she says. How I'm struggling to figure out, Josh, how this is supposed to kind of be something that accelerates wealth accumulation. If one, like you said, we can't buy into it, we can't afford it. Like I just said too, we're servicing our debt and whatever else. Like what is a house? Like what is a house if it's not what a house used to be? Like in terms of a white house in a white neighborhood, if it's not that house, then what is home ownership?
Yes, and let's dig into her plan for a minute because the plan is really irresponsible. What she's basing that whole plan on is a 2015 study by the think tank Demos, right? And in that study, economists have all these assumptions, and they plug in these assumptions, which basically creates this fantasy world. So in that Demos plan, they have this assumption, they call it equalizing assets. Basically, it means all things being equal, right? And they say for every $1 in wealth built by black homeowners, white families accrue $1.34. And that's the entire report is based on that. So basically they say if all things were equal, median black wealth would grow by about $32,000 per household. Keep in mind, we've already had some of the world's leading economists debunk this. Sandy Darity tore this plan apart in his report that he did with Derek Hamilton and Antonio and the other economists. And basically what Sandy Darity said is, in that Demos plan, they're basically saying that if black families own homes at the same rate, they would have wealth. Which is like saying if you had wealth, you would have wealth, right? It's just
if you had money, you'd have money.
Arbitrary assumption.
Yeah.
So you have this plan. You have Sandy Darity saying the wealth gap's not about homeownership out of Duke University. You have Raj Shetty out of Stanford saying the homeownership is not the driver of the racial wealth gap. You have William Emmons out of the St. Louis Fed publishing a report saying it has nothing to do with homeownership. So if you're Kamala Harris, you don't look to three of the world's leading economists. You look at this 2015 report from Demos that's already been debunked, which is irresponsible. And it kind of shows that this was sort of a plan. It was a very surface level plan. It was designed to, I think, she was looking for something because Elizabeth Warren had a plan. Everybody's trying to sort of dig into the space Bernie had dug into in 16, and it was her way of coming up with that. But it doesn't stand up to any sort of rationality test even for a second.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Josh. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, you're right. It doesn't stand up to scrutiny, and I think she was just trying to respond to the push for a black agenda. But let me just ask this too. When you look at what I talked about in terms of 34K, that's you said that's normally what blacks are in terms of middle. When you look at that too, what the income is, like if you have that, you can't buy, and correct me if I'm wrong, a $200,000 home, and that's in terms of the kind of home that's going to accrue value. Are banks even trying to give loans in terms of homes that we can't afford?
No, and they can't. It's at this point under the new regulations, it's against the law. Like you can't buy a home if you make $30K, right? And the way HUD calculates housing affordability is if you spend more than 30% of your income on housing, That's not affordable. So if you're at 30K, you can afford a $500 a month apartment, and you can afford like an $80,000 house, right? That's how it's set up. But banks aren't making loans on $80,000 homes. There are no $80,000 homes left, right? Yeah. So you've got to get into, like 57K before you can even talk about affording a home, based on HUD's affordability metrics.
57K.
So if you're talking about 57K, yeah, so that's like in most Midwestern cities, most cities in the South, that's like 25% of the black population making over 57K. So and most of them already own homes. So you're not even touching the people that really need the subsidies or whatever program you're trying to provide. You're not even touching half the people.
So if you said so let me just make sure I understand this. 35K, that's us, that's black people, that's ADOS. So when you go into these places, like you may have 20% who make over that or whatever, and in terms of ADOS, they already own homes. So what you're really touching is not the majority of black America. You're touching maybe a few boule and some gentrifiers, because you don't have race in there. You say you're trying to do this in redlined areas, but you don't say that the people have to be black or have to be people who come from that community or whatever. You don't say that. So what really happens is you're hitting a few black people, who are probably boomer hooked, in terms of like they may have inheritance, because that's the other thing, Josh, we don't have inheritance. So it's not even like you can say, well, my income isn't this, but I'm getting this from mommy and daddy, right? So my income isn't where it needs to be, but daddy's gonna hit me with 30 on the down payment. So with this other piece, I'll be able to put that together and meet the qualifications. None of that's happening. So where does that leave us in Kamala's plan?
And if you're talking about Gen X and below, you're talking about people that have already accrued massive amount of student loan debt and credit card debt. So now you want to lock them in a 30-year mortgage on top of that? It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make sense based on any data. But keep in mind, when she says redlined areas, that's sort of like opportunity zones, right? That's a place-based initiative. And we've been through three economies in this country, right? We had an agrarian economy in which freedom black labor was the driver of that economy. We moved to an industrial economy where, concentrated poverty for black people, very low wages for black people were really the driver of the industrial economy. Now we've moved to a real estate-based economy. And in that sense, with gentrification, the exploitation of black communities is still driving the real estate-based economy. Because here's how people have accrued wealth through real estate for decades. The cities keep growing farther out, right? Mm-hmm. And this is how zoning works. The land zone farther out is zoned like agriculture. So say a developer buys 30 acres of land for $80,000, zoned agricultural. He takes it to the planning commission. They rezone it residential. Now it's worth $3.5 million. That's wealth accumulation, right? Mm-hmm. Now we're reversing that inward. And since black people occupy land and we still have de facto racial zoning, it's worth very little simply because black people occupy it. So the developer buys land that's black occupied, worth $20,000. Through gentrification, through city planning, it becomes white occupied. Now it's worth $3.5 million. Right? That's a wealth creation, and it's a reversed. It's a spatial reversal. But that's what's driving wealth. That's how Trump got rich. It's all based on speculation, and it's based on basically de facto racial zoning. And the way we've explained those three economies, we've had these sort of fanatical explanations, right? So in slavery, it was just like God ordained it to be that way, right? Like God wanted this group to be capitalist and this group of people to be slaves. As we moved into industrialism, we used eugenics and social Darwinism to kind of explain that, right? It was this sort of cultural component. Now we have this sort of free market explanation that the market is going to remedy this, and then that is every bit as fanatical as the other two explanations. But that's what we're getting right now, is somehow the market's going to step in and remedy these things. And what I'm looking at 10, 15 years out is a housing crisis that is simply going to be devastating for black communities around this country. People are simply being priced out of neighborhoods, and it's to a point of, where are black people going to go? And I've really been looking at Nashville, because Nashville developed very rapidly, gentrified really rapidly, so it's already in sort of the second cycle of gentrification. The mayor of Nashville just came out and said, hey, we're going to allocate $500 million for affordable housing for people under 20,000. So 20,000 under, we're spending $500 million, and he's asking the private sector to put in $250 million. And it looks like the private sector is sort of on board with that. Now, why would they do that, right? They didn't just decide to be compassionate people all of a sudden. Mm-hmm. They did that because they developed so quickly that what they've experienced was a massive increase in homelessness for black families. Homeless families are showing up at the shelters. Mm-hmm. And it's not because they have mental health issues, not because they have, substance abuse issues, because they can't afford the rent. Right? Rents are going, if you, under $25K and the rent goes up to $1,200 a month for a one-bedroom apartment, you're out. You're priced out. You're homeless. And that's the conversation we should be having at the national level in the Democratic debates. How do we do something for this group of people who simply can't participate in this separate economy? Because redlining really created two economies, right? And as that other economy moves into black neighborhoods, people can't participate in that economy. And there's no place for people to go.
Yeah, and I think only black people in the poorest, that bottom quintile of white people, really understand that you get kicked out. And there was a great article, I think it was in City Lab a while ago, about how people get targeted in terms of rent, and a lot of that happens in black neighborhoods where you can be $100 short and you can't find that other $100. Like, I don't know, I think a lot of us have been there, college educated. Everybody's been there. Like, you got to go find it. And that's a big deal. And I think one of the things that I want to say too, in terms of the cost of this, $100 billion. I don't think people see, we haven't trained people to like read budgets and stuff. Nobody really understands that that's not a lot of money. And so what happens because of this is just supposed to be like previously redlined areas, is that now $100 billion isn't as much money as people think it is when you look at American budgets. And so there's another part of this that comes in terms of people come in now and start competing for that little nugget of money, right? And a lot of those people are not black people. They may be minority. They may be whites who live there or do live there in these previously redlined areas. And you get out competed by people who can do that and maneuver that better than you. So let's say what we've already said. Most black people are not in this category of people who make enough 57, 65, at least minimum, to be able to even compete, to be able to at least say, I want a house. Only 20% are there, right? Of that 20, most have a home. The other ones, you got like a minority of blacks who are competing with whites who want to gentrify for a home. And so the idea to me that this is some kind of reparations is insane. And let me just say this before I go back to you, Josh. The new ball game is like stock ownership. And let me just read this, because the government has decided under Obama and Trump that quantitative easing and tax breaks, we literally have went from 75 trillion in total U.S. household wealth in 2012 to 107 trillion in total U.S. household wealth in 2019, which effectively means if your grandparents can't give you stock transfers, you can't access other assets like homes, like homes as millennials. Like as a millennial, the government pumped a 1/3 new wealth tied to white privilege into the market. So what that's telling you is that if nobody's there to what happened to Obama? I heard his grandmama gave him stock. If nobody can just hand you this stock and say, go do what you got to do, you're in a position where you locked out. But we don't understand timing, so we think that this is Kamala's gonna let us in, when really we've already been locked out. Only thing that she's doing is positioning gentrifiers and maybe a handful of black people to be able to compete for this small $100 billion nugget. And if you don't think it's a nugget, go look at the budgets. You can look at all the budgets there. House.gov. Go look at all of it. So I want to ask you this though, Josh, and you can say whatever you want to say about what I just said, but I want to ask you, if somebody was doing a plan, I know you said you looked to Nashville, but if you had your druthers, if somebody brought you to Capitol Hill and say, okay, show me the plan that you want to see, tell us what it would look like. People always say, well, Yvette, what's the solution? Tell us what your dream plan, would look like if you were designing a home ownership plan to help black people.
Well, it would exist on two levels. right? And the first level is you have to stop the devastation. So you have to stop the bleeding, and then you have to deal with the structural issues. And stopping the bleeding means we sort of have this fairy tale notion that everyone can just participate in the market, right? Like we kind of explain redlining like, well, or we sort of explain racism in this country, that it's like a race, and black people are just a little bit behind, so they just need to catch up. And that's not really the proper context. So the idea that people can benefit from the market is the wrong way of thinking about it, because actually the market is designed, the structure of the market is based on their exploitation. So the first thing we have to do is actually protect people from the market. So we have to talk about rent control policies nationally across the board, right? We have to put a cap on those rents to protect people from the homelessness that's coming as the gentrification happens. And there's something that we do in this country is that we always individualize policy, right? Okay. But oppression is collective. So people are oppressed collectively, right? Think slavery, think police terrorism, think redlining. So, but then policy solutions come individualized. So, and it always comes in the form of like a financial literacy package, right? So we pathologize the people being oppressed as if, well, people just don't know how to manage money, so we'll give them a financial literacy class. And it's always designed that way. So policy solutions have to be collective in nature, and that's when solutions start to form. So you stop the harm that's being caused. It has to be a harm reduction strategy, rent control, collective ownership models, because we have to realize, like, this is a wealthless group, right? When we talk about 50K, 30K, that's income. That's just income. Can't build wealth without wealth, right? The benefits, you can't benefit from capitalism if you don't have capital. So we've got to start thinking about collective ownership models. We've got to start thinking about community land trust. We've got to start thinking about collective solutions. Then we have to really look at dismantling systems. As long as we have the system of zoning that's based on structural racism, the system of lending that's based on structural racism, even if people accrue wealth, it's going to go right back to the wealthiest group, because it's designed that way, right? It's a white supremacist system that's designed to benefit and service white supremacy. So there's an element of systems dismantling in this, and then most importantly, while you have those protections in place, there's no way out of this without a massive transfer of wealth. Wealth redistribution has to be a conversation, and that's where reparations come in. I've been talking about reparations a long time, and the reason I talk about reparations so much is because I've spent about 20 years just making maps based on census data. And if you look at census data over and over again every day, you sort of realize, like, there's really no way out of this situation without that wealth transfer. So, and that's where, and that has to be designed. That has to be, and we can't sit here and say, well, I know exactly what that is, because we're talking about calculating a serious debt from the end of the Civil War to today. But there has to be a serious policy around that, and hopefully HR 40 will be that, and then hopefully HR 40 will also encompass those protections that need to come into play. And we need to talk about, the HUD budget at the end of the 70s was like $83 billion. Reagan cut that down to $18 billion. But this is the HUD budget for housing construction. Reagan cut that, so by 83 it's like $18 billion, right? Wow. By the 90s it's zero. So we need to talk about, and that was $83 billion, right? That was what HUD was spending on housing in the 70s. We need budgets for people to keep people in homes at that level.
And you know what else, Josh? I think we're assuming, like, we talk about things kind of flat just because of, we talk about income, right? So if you're black and you want to be a part of Kamala's plan, you have to make $60K to even kind of be there. But what we don't also talk about is, even when she talks about, well, I want utilities to be included or whatever. Do you think we always paid our light bill on time, Kamala? What were you? But the part of the thing is, there's still an assumption that the black person who made $60K is necessarily going to have good credit, and to me that is a thorough misunderstanding of what it means to be black. That's why credit becomes such a barrier, because when you have an unstable life, the tendency is for your credit not to be good. And it's not necessarily because you're a bad person. You didn't have the money to pay. You paid this for mama, or you paid this for daddy or brother or sister. You tried to make your student loan payment or whatever. Tried to pay for school. You had to pay for rent. A lot of things happen. Like, black life is like a landmine, and stuff is going off all the time. So there's an assumption there that, like, you have to have all of the pieces together. And what black life has meant is that you don't, being black means that your pieces ain't together because you've been taken apart and deconstructed by your own country. So, you know, even when we look at just income, I know we like to look at income and say, well, this person would qualify. But there are some other things in there would say, well, not necessarily. Not necessarily they wouldn't. And so, you know, I want to give you the opportunity. You know, I appreciate you being here in terms of, you know, everything we've talked about. I just want to give you the opportunity to have a last word, if you want to have it, in terms of, you know, just any criticism or any thoughts or where we need to go from here. Take it over.
Well, I think that the housing issue needs to be as an important an issue in the democratic debate as climate change. I think it is that big. And if you think about housing, to me, housing is you know, because I do a lot with, like, root cause analysis. Housing is a foundational issue, right?
Okay.
Like, nothing else really works if you don't have stable housing. And we know that with people that are housing insecure have bad, you know, public health outcomes. There are all sorts of multipliers that happen when people are housing insecure. The eviction situation, the housing situation right now, all over the South and Midwest and black communities, is devastating. And if we don't get a handle on it, what policymakers need to ask themselves: are we really prepared to deal with a 15% spike in homelessness in cities that is mostly going to impact black communities? Are we willing to deal with a 20% increase in homelessness in 2 to 3 years as these rents increase? And if we're not, then we need to develop policies that are proportionate to that. But this idea that, hey, we're just going to give everybody $25,000 and they're going to get a home and they're going to be wealthy and they're going to be middle class and everything's all right, is not based on any data. So it's upsetting. I mean, Yvette, this is the most important election of our lifetime, arguably, right?
Yeah.
There's too much at stake here for Kamala Harris to go in, read a 2015 report from Demos, come up with a plan that's sort of a fairy tale plan. I really expected better out of the Democratic candidates. It's like, did we not learn anything from 2008? Did we not learn anything in 2016? It's not looking good right now.
I expected, Josh. That's the only point in this conversation where you and I disagree. I expected this. I expected exactly what we have. And the thing of it is, even when I looked at it, I'm not going to get that deep into it. So much of her plan was just taking like a little nugget from Elizabeth Warren's plan and like exploding it like confetti over at the Essence Festival. But it is what it is. At a certain point, you have to kind of understand that I hate to say it, but sometimes we do get the politicians we deserve, and these are awful. But I want to thank you so much, Josh, for coming on and kind of breaking this down for everybody. I appreciate it. And anytime that you want to come on and kind of break something down that you see in the news or housing that you feel like should be explained or that needs a breakdown, you know, I appreciate if you reach out to me and we'll have a conversation. Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Yvette. Anytime.
All right, appreciate you, man. Yeah, like this is appreciate it. Bye, Josh. This is some real interest. I mean, I'm interested to see what everybody has to say about it, because Kamala said a lot of stuff. She said a lot of stuff when she was there. When you break down the numbers, so that's the thing. You know, words lie, and I use a lot of words, but I anchor them. I anchor them in specific kinds of data. I anchor them because words are used to get you into an emotional space. But data is very clear. Words are very emotive to get you into a place where you kind of bring out that core emotion. But data is very, very clear on what's happening, what's going on. The data is telling you how this group is moving. Is this group upwardly mobile, downwardly mobile? Accessing American life or not accessing American life? The data, when you access it, so you have to wonder about if we're going to, I'm just going to go through some of this stuff now since we already had this conversation. historically, one of the most powerful, most drivers of wealth in our country. She's talking about homeownership. We just talked to Josh. No. We weren't allowed to like integrate into communities, and time is everything. We weren't allowed to integrate. We were contagion to wealth. So even if we have homes, these little Negroes who run around all the time, oh my God, Yvette, they got homes for $2 in Detroit. Yvette, you should just go to Detroit. They have dilapidated homes in Detroit. Go fix it up. Holler back at me. Let me know how everything turned out for you. See, part of the problem in talking to Josh and other people is that you begin to understand that there are a lot of people who don't do anything but talk. Don't really access information, but they do a lot of talking. They do a lot of talking. Understand something. When you talk about America has 107 trillion in personal wealth, which whites have over 90 trillion. All of Black America controls less than 3 trillion. With 2.25 trillion of the 3 in the top 10% of Black families. The top 75% of Blacks have nearly no wealth. The bottom 75%, I'm sorry. The bottom 75% of Blacks have nearly no wealth combined. Do we have to keep watching this chart? Think about this chart and Kamala's plan. Just no worries. I want you to just pay close attention. You don't have to do nothing. You ain't gotta dance. You ain't gotta do a jig. You just gotta look at it. Just gotta understand what it means for you and your life, your people. Hold on, let me bring that other part back in. You see that big blue? I call that part of the chart big blue. Big blue. Bottom 50% of Black household worth less than $1. What that means is you can't come up with a down payment. And even if you do, the bank probably not going to finance it because you can't afford the kind of house. They're not financing your $80,000 home. That's not good business. It will take government to come in and say, you got to do this. This is important to the country. It's important to fairness. It's important to redress. That's what it would take. We're not there. I'm just trying to be honest about it. What else does she say? They can't qualify for a home loan. We dealt with them. I'm just making sure we dealt with everything that Kamala said during that thing. No, because let me just say this. Everybody wants to fix race without fixing race. So you want to say, well, we're doing this for historically redlined communities, but you're not doing it for people that you can trace back to who have been redlined. ADOS people. Now we can do that. That takes work, but we can do it. But you will have to have some specificity. I think even wasn't Elizabeth Warren's plan, because this is just a knockoff of the Demos plan and Elizabeth Warren plan too, combined into one. But didn't her plan at least require that you have lived in the community for a certain amount of time? Now that's not good enough, and I think Dr. Darity spoke to that at one point. But like this is not about Black America. This is about that community. They're going to circumvent this. We've already talked about this. So I'm going to take calls in just 1 second. 1 second, please. But I just want to bring it up. I want to bring up something. I'm going to be petty, Kamala, because your stuff looks a little bit like Elizabeth Warren stuff, except hers is more expensive. Yours was 100 billion, hers is 500. I'm just going to bring it up. This is just a little Elizabeth Warren. I'm not taking sides on nothing, but y'all got to stop trying to knock off plans, taking the Demos plan and cobbling it with a little Elizabeth Warren and going to the Essence Festival saying, woo! My housing plan starts by attacking the growing cost of rent. Millions of Americans' families are spending more than 30% of their income on rent. My plan will bring down rental costs by 10% by addressing the root causes of the problems, a severe lack of affordable housing. And we do need more affordable housing because these homes are dilapidated. A severe lack of affordable housing supply and state and local land use rules that needlessly drive up housing costs. Now, this is Elizabeth Warren, not Kamala. I just want to say, this isn't Kamala ain't rebuilding nobody's wheel. I don't know who she thinks she's playing with. She's playing games. My bill makes historic federal investments to increase housing supply, to invest $500 billion over the next 10 years to build, preserve, rehab units that will be affordable to lower income families. A big chunk of that investment leverages private dollars so that taxpayers get the most bang for their buck. By building millions of units, my plan will reduce the cost of rent for everyone. An independent analysis from Mark Zandi, the chief economist at Moody's Analytics, found that my plan would reduce rent costs by 10%. Now, understand something. We still can't afford that. 10%, Elizabeth, is not nearly enough. That's not nearly enough. I don't know what everybody is doing or what everybody is thinking. But when we talk about how would we pay for this new investment, simple. Currently, an heir doesn't pay $1 of estate taxes until they inherit a fortune of $22 million. I would lower that threshold to $7 million. I'm in favor of going in on inheritance at all costs because that stuff should not belong to you anyway. So if you want to take the inheritance, I am for it. What I'm just trying to say is that why are we giving Kamala credit for taking something that was already available to Demos and looks a lot like, except for the expansive stuff that Warren talked about, the basic, that was a crux of Warren's plan to say the same thing. We're going to provide home ownership assistance in traditionally redline communities. Same thing. What are you talking about? How do you cheer that? You only cheer that if you haven't been paying attention to politics. You don't know what's going on. So anyway, fam, give me a couple of minutes. Give me a second. I'm just going to check on and do something with the phones real quick. And you all can call in now. Give me a couple minutes. I'll be right back just to tweak something real quick. And we will have the conversation about the conversation we just had. All right, fam. I am right back. I'm going to 617. 617. I'm coming to you. What's going on?
What's going on, Yvette? It's Reggie from Boston. What's happening?
What's going on, Reggie? How you doing?
Oh, I'm doing good. This is an awesome show.
Thank you.
Shout out to Josh Poe.
He's man, he doing it.
Just so much what he talked about was just so real, especially about the rents, because that's a lot of what surrounds a lot of my advocacy, here in Boston. And just as a real estate broker out here, I see this all of the time. Mm-hmm. And I really try to do some advocacy and even education with some of the people that I interact with. But at the end of the day, the only people who can afford to live here, and I mean the only people, are the students who have families that come from elite backgrounds, and white people. And then, rich and maybe some rich immigrants, here and there. That's really it. And in terms of, my client base, that's it. The black people can't afford it. Like when the rent goes up, like Job said, the so-called free market is still running off of that old system. So I don't have to put up a sign that says no blacks. All I have to do is put up the rent. And the rent itself says no blacks. Because by the data, you don't have it. So the redlining, it reinvents itself, and it gives rebirth to itself as wealth is calcified, and as people are shut out of wealth, and also shut out of jobs and opportunity. But I think the whole conversation, since Kamala brought up the housing thing, I really think that the statement that home and land ownership is the main driver of wealth, it's a lie. It's just a lie. I mean, in terms of white people, sure, that's true. But even in the case of white people, it's a lie, and it's a lie by omission.
Yeah.
Because what you are omitting is the fact that the bodies of our ancestors were the single largest asset in America during slavery. So the question that I would pose to Kamala Harris is, what was the main driver of wealth for Mitch McConnell's family? Is it Mitch McConnell's house? Or is it the 14 slaves his great-great-grandfathers owned?
Absolutely.
You see what I'm saying, Yvette?
I see exactly what you're saying.
No. Yes. Now, if you look through the article, 12 of those slaves were women, and you know what that means. Those women were raped, forced to bear children, and those babies were either sold or put to work to build the family more wealth. So that number's bigger than 14. They just saw that on the census. They did not go far enough. We're not even talking the slaves that were born out of that oppression, and what was sold down, whether we're talking slaves or the wealth that came from them. But Kamala's out here dodging, talking about, let's talk about how. So I'm getting real tired of these dodges. You got to come up with the reparations. Don't try to dodge with housing and with this and that. Granted, that's part of the repair, from redlining, but you got to go all the way back to the beginning, and they're dodging it. I'm reminded of what Marianne Williamson said, that the establishment will put something out in front of some half measure to preserve the status quo, and this is exactly what we're seeing. Like, she totally called that one. And just another point in terms of when we're talking affordability and building wealth, why it's also a lie is that 25,000 that she's talking about, and like you and Josh rightly pointed out, you're not getting all of that 25,000.
No.
That could go towards a combination of down payment, closing costs, or whatever, or it might have to go to credit cards or whatever else. But even if we assume that you get all of that 25,000, you still can't buy that much of a house. And even if you do, even if you meet the threshold for some of the houses that you may be able to afford, if you get around that, if you go any less than 20% on a down payment, you trigger what's called private mortgage insurance, which insures against, high risk loan and how much that you borrowed. So you're not only paying the principal and the interest, along with the home insurance, along with the taxes, which they commonly wrap into the mortgage, you are also paying that private mortgage insurance. So on top of all of that, you're paying that insurance, instead of paying your loan down, which slows the rate at which you can accrue equity. So not only are you a contagion to wealth, not only can you not buy as much house, but because of your wealth position to not be able to put down that down payment, you got to pay that extra insurance instead of paying into the house to get more equity. This whole thing is a scam. But that's all I got.
You had a lot. You had a lot, Reg. I appreciate it. That's not nothing. All right, I appreciate it. I appreciate it, Reg. I appreciate it, Reg. As always. Yeah, be scamming. I don't know. Everybody's scamming. Black people running around though. But they probably had a little. It was the Essence Festival. They might have a little drink in them. Anyway, 310, what's going on?
What up? It's Tone Talks. I want to go through a couple of things. I sent you 2 images earlier, but then there's a third one of the Washington Post article. I want to talk about that last. It's in your email. But nonetheless, let's come back to what Yvette was saying earlier when she was talking to Josh Poe and talk about the deconstruction of... So black bodies were containers of wealth and also creators of wealth. Containers in the sense that a black body, so one black slave with 3 years of field work would be worth more than the house. And so effectively then with the women, you could reproduce that multiple times over, 6-7 times over during her prime years of childbearing years. And fundamentally, I think we don't understand what kind of wealth tool that was in a world where slaves ruled, not cotton. They say cotton ruled. Cotton was king. No, it was slaves that were king. And the ownership of slave bodies. We moved from that system to a system where black people were contagious to wealth. We've talked about that so many times. Effectively, a single black family in one of these redlined areas destroyed the wealth not only for black people, but also for white folks. But the biggest part that was pointed to earlier is that it overpowered white success. So black failure was so strong that it literally overpowered white success. The most powerful wealth-holding tool in America. They made it that strong as far as black failure. One black family could destroy a whole neighborhood of white wealth. Do you know what that does to a group that's fresh out of slavery? It locks them into being a permanent bottom line. And that's your family. And I think for a lot of us now, because of that one little blip of time, and I literally call it a blip of time called the boomer era, from about like 68 until 95, or even let's go further, 05, we recreated America in a system that doesn't exist anymore, where it doesn't matter where you come from, because you can go work in a factory and turn that into a middle-class life. America has to make the decision that that's important, but that's not what America's deciding today. Can we pull up the Wall Street Journal article? Because what you got to understand, Yvette read it earlier. We have to understand that as of this year, there's $107 trillion in household wealth in the market. But they literally have boosted it and flooded it in a way where it's all in white hands, all the gas. So we went from 85 trillion to 107 trillion. Understand that 90 trillion of it is in white hands. 90 trillion. Only 3 trillion in black hands, 2.2 of that in the top 10% of black boomers' hands. Few celebrities, mostly all black boomers. So if you're not hooked to a boomer, you out. So what they've effectively done with this system that Kamala don't understand, we're going to get to it, is that if you don't have a boomer that can hand you 100,000, 150,000 at your pivotal moment of transitioning from a child to an adult, you're out. If you don't have a boomer that at their passing point, where they pass from life to death, can hand you $500,000 or $1 million, you're out. The book Dream Hoarders told you, you got to be in the top 20% to access the American dream. That's $600,000 in wealth. I commend Josh Poe, really liked what he was saying, but I think the numbers were low. And in that sense, I think, and I'm not saying that in the sense to critique his study, because he does great with it. But effectively, I think when we start talking about $60,000, there's a difference between a white $60,000 in income and a black one. Because what happens is we don't understand that when we look at the labor data, 57% of black homes are making are making less than $60,000. We don't understand that when you make $60,000 as a black person, you black rich for your family. So that means $100 here and $100 there helping people that can't even survive. I'm saying all this just to say, Kamala don't get it. Kamala the lotus flower, she don't get it, and that's what her name means. I think in Indian, lotus or something. She really doesn't understand what we live because she didn't live that. Her mama was Brahmin Indian elite. Her father was a professor at Stanford. Understand what that means to have that in the 70s. I said this in my video. It's rare to have two professor careers that teach at Stanford and Berkeley or whatever today. Think about what it was to be black and have that in 73 or 75 or 81. I don't think we're able to contextualize Kamala Harris, just like we couldn't contextualize Barack Obama. And I think part of the problem right now is we got too many people talking. Can you pull up the article with Kamala at the Essence Festival? See, there's a lot of people coming out of Essence.com and Boxes, and now they're trying to write on politics. The problem is that they don't know what they're talking about. So what they're doing is puff pieces that don't really critique what the policy is because they don't know how to. We have Bree Joy with Bernie Sanders. She did a new video. She has no idea what she's talking about. She has zero ideas what she's talking about as far as the wealth gap.
Did you call her Bree Joy? He said
Brianna Gray, whatever her name is. She has no idea what she's talking about. So the Bernie plan, when you actually lay it flat, will lead to black ADOS actually declining as far as the racial wealth gap. It'll help new black immigrants because of their college degree rate. It'll help white people. But as far as black folks, no, it'll actually expand the gap between us and everyone else. Because we only got a 13% college degree rate. She don't know that. But this article here is by Tara Edwards. Now, I don't know Tara's history, but it isn't writing. Because what Tara says at the top is Kamala Harris housing plan can. Let's say it again before we get to the rest. Kamala Harris housing plan can. Now, you don't say can unless you know what you're talking about. This is the problem with how we tell stories. This is not boxing. This isn't a Drake story. This isn't whether Jay-Z and Beyonce are getting married in France or did a video somewhere. You need to know what you're talking about before you say it. So literally you have a writer saying that $100 billion plan, not tied to race, but tied to a certain level of income that likely will go to white gentrifiers, can close the racial wealth gap, which is we just did the numbers, about $87 trillion. $100 billion plan can close $87 trillion racial wealth gap. Does that make sense, Yvette?
Absolutely not.
This woman shouldn't write no more. Yeah, she shouldn't even write no more. Tara Edwards, you should stop writing. Because you don't understand when you're not. See, everybody's trying to be her friend. This is not your college friend from Howard or UCLA. This is not your sister girl, AKA. This is a person running for your vote that is saying stuff that doesn't make sense, that drastically impact negatively your family. Drastically negatively impact your family. I wanted to pull this up because it gives context to why black folks at Essence, while black folks across this country can't even understand when somebody says something that doesn't make sense, like a housing plan that gives $25K to black folks that literally are wealthless, will close the racial wealth gap and make them middle class and stable. How do you say that? I don't know. Now the other thing I wanted to kind of talk about real briefly was the Washington Post article. Can you pull that up? Because the Washington Post did an article today. I did a video on it. It was about ADOS, and a few liberal activists challenged Kamala Harris's black authenticity. I said this on my video. You can check out the full video on my channel. But we're not talking about Kamala Harris's blackness or Barack Obama's. They're both black people. We're talking about us as ADOS. See, what these people have tried to do is take two black people in Kamala Harris and Barack Obama that are not ADOS and make them more important than 33 million black folks, ADOS folks across the country. See, they're talking about through her instead of us. Now, understand, I'll say this to you as I said it on my channel. We did the interview for this weeks ago. We did a follow-up interview after the Donald Trump thing. But weeks ago, he interviewed us for this, but he waited till something like the Donald Trump thing happened to write this story. Because you can't just write about ADOS just on his face. And then when you read the article, fundamentally, I can respect the quote, but at the end of the day, what you see is a need to build Kamala instead of being honest about who Kamala is.
Ooh.
Kamala Harris did truancy laws. Kamala Harris grew up half Indian and half Jamaican, but was anchored in her Brahmin Indian mother, according to her own sister. Kamala Harris is not my mother. She's not Yvette's mother. Kamala Harris is not ADOS. I don't understand why she can't just run on her resume. But the reason why she can't run on her resume is because she don't have one. So this is where we're at. Fundamentally, I just wanted to bring this story up because we needed to touch on it because it came out today and they called us tiny or small. Well, I don't know how you measure small because we about as big as Joy Reid show on YouTube. Between me and Yvette show, we about biggest of Joy Reid show on YouTube with no budget. And this is just the beginning. They can believe what they want, but we coming. ADOS conference, 1,500 sold out. It's on stream, and we're going to have about 25,000 people live. Understand that we got Marianne Williamson and a few other special guests coming for you. We're not playing. We done changed the whole discussion. We done changed the discussion of reparations. The week before this in the Hill, the senators said they want reparations to go away. Well, if this is going away, y'all got a problem because y'all giving us kindle advice. And we coming. That's all I wanted to say.
All right, Tone, I appreciate it. I appreciate it, as always. Yeah, I don't know what to say. I don't know. This article is very interesting in the sense of, everybody is seeking to kind of minimize us. And I don't think everybody understands that it's just not going to work. Because whether or not, they was like, well, it's a teeny group, the people who are using the ADOS hashtag. No, everybody. It doesn't mean that the only people who agree with us are the people who are on Twitter using the hashtag. That doesn't mean that. And then you're only as strong as the most fervent fighters in your army. So I don't even know what you think you mean, but I don't think you know what you mean, but it's going to be there. We're going to figure this thing out. And I'm like, if you think, let me just say this, and I'm going to say this, I'm going to go to the next caller. If you think that your will is greater than my will, if you really think that I'm always going to bet on me, I know me. So keep it going. You think that you can just mischaracterize and everybody's going to just fall off and go away. I've said this before. ADOS is an identity. It's anchored in what we have contributed to this country and who we are. That's what ADOS is. You cannot undo that. And you certainly can't make me frustrated. So keep writing your stuff. We appreciate it. And I always interview. Antonio and I get on the conference call together. And we always had a conversation together. We know what we said. We know what we didn't say. We'll keep it moving. So I am going to 407. 407. What's going on?
Hey, Yvette. It's Zarina.
What's going on?
I couldn't help but to call in tonight. I was itching. You had Josh on there. I was like, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. But I had to.
Okay.
So I just want to address a few things, actually, and I'm going to try not to take forever on your call. But the first thing I want to address before I get into what I'm going to get into is I've been noticing sort of this trend, and hopefully nobody in the chat or anybody watching Breaking Brown has this problem, but there seems to be this idea that homeownership is like a bad thing and that renting is better because it's somehow more beneficial to the person. And they had an interview by Vlad TV. I don't watch his stuff, but they had this guy named Grant Cardone on there. And Grant's like, yeah, I don't own anything. Everything's going to rent. The problem with that is, first of all, Grant Cardone is a billionaire, so he can afford to rent wherever he goes. It doesn't matter. We are not billionaires, and people kind of looking at home ownership like, hey, I'm going to buy this house and it's not going to appreciate. That's the wrong philosophy to have at this point in the game. See, the whole point of somebody who's poor or near poor buying a home is not so you can have somewhere that appreciates and you can create wealth. It's to have a place where you don't get kicked out in 30 days because you can't afford it. Like, the whole idea that we're going to buy houses to appreciate is over. You're going to buy a house so you can avoid the trap of rent. So that's the first thing I want to kind of point out to people.
Okay, but go back. Hold on. What did you just... Hold on. I hear you, but what did you just say? The days of buying homes that appreciate are over? Did you just say that?
Pretty much. So the days of like, hey, I'm going to sit on this house for the next 10 years and let it appreciate, and then I'm going to cash out of this. first of all, nobody's going to buy your house because of the neighborhood you live in. Even if it's gentrifying, when you cash out of it, you probably have a lot of debt that money's going to go to. So you're kind of holding on to a house to get back to zero. So you say, no, I'm just going to rent because I'm not going to appreciate any wealth. That's the wrong philosophy to have, because you're going to end up giving all of your what could be wealth away. And the idea behind renting, people don't even understand where that concept even comes from. There was an economist, a political economist and journalist named Henry George, and he died in like 1890 something.
Good old Henry.
But he was very critical of the American political system and the economy and things like that. And one of the things that he talked about was a single tax. Like, let's not have all these multiple different kinds of taxes. Let's do a single tax. And so he wrote books called Progress and Poverty, and it was like one of the best sellers. So he had all these students. People were like, yeah, we really need to look at the economy and how we're doing this stuff. One of his students wanted to express how devastating rentals and landlords and stuff like that could be. And so she created a game where you had to pick a side. You could be the landlord or you can be the tenant. And basically she wanted the person to pick being the tenant so that you could understand what was going to happen to you. And her game was eventually created, and that's the game we have now called Monopoly. And how do you win Monopoly? You basically keep charging higher and higher rent until you literally bankrupt everybody else in the game. And so we just think it's like a little board game. But the truth of the matter is that's what rent does to you. When your rent increases, your income might not increase. And even if your income increases, you're like, oh my gosh, I'm making a few extra dollars an hour, your rent is going to go up next month. So you never get ahead of the game. At this point, home ownership should have been on the table for a lot of people, but now we've got this trend where we're looking to these super rich people who don't pay anything in terms of what their income does. And we're like, yeah, home ownership is stupid. I'm not going to get the appreciation. No. So that being said, I just want to, because I'm in finance, and I want people to really understand just how locked out you personally are. Not you, Yvette, but I'm just talking about like people listening.
Oh, I'm locked out too.
43%. That's the 43%. All right. So I want you to remember this number, 43%. That is the maximum debt to income that you can have in order to qualify for a mortgage. So I'm going to throw a number out there, and I want people to understand if you make less than this, you're kind of out. If you make $50,000 a year, your debt to income, and this assumes you have no other debt. You don't have a car loan. You don't have student loan debts. This assumes nothing else. Your debt to income ratio at around 43% is going to be like $1,100 to $1,200 a month. But that has to include, and this is you getting a home loan, that $1,100 has to include your principal, your interest, your taxes, and your insurance. So that'll maximum put you at about $180,000 if you're on like the lowest interest rate that you can get now. And guess what? If you're black, you're not going to get the lowest interest rate because they base everything on your credit. And what people say is like, well, credit, they don't ask for your race. No, they don't need to because they ask for your zip code. And if you have a black zip code, you're not going to get approved on credit. That's how they do that, because they can do that now. They know where black people live. So, oh no, this is a black zip code. We're not going to approve them for this loan. We're going to give them a higher interest rate. So, assuming that you can get the lowest interest rate, which is right now like 5.5%, the maximum, if you make $50,000 a year and have no other debt, the maximum you can get is a $180,000 loan. So, where is this plan from Kamala coming in to say, hey, we'll give you $25,000? That doesn't help you at all. Period. And so I just want people to understand the numbers are built in the way that they're built in. And this idea that Kamala is going to come in and like $25,000 is a lot of money depending on what you're doing with it. $25,000 for a home is nothing. And so her coming in and saying, hey, we're going to do this, you might be in a market where a shack is like $300,000. So you only qualify for $180,000, so you're out of the game anyway. And then you're left to rent, and then you're kicked out because you can't afford your rent. So I just want people to kind of understand the cycle that we're in at this point. It's really abysmal, and I just had to call in.
Well, kind of what you're saying too. You know, to get the lowest rate, you buy your parents co-signing, you may use their zip code. You're effectively kind of saying too that home ownership is a generational thing. Like if I can be in my home, if my parents are white, I'm in their neighborhood, right, and I get their money for my home, it becomes a generational transfer. And it's not just the money that's the transfer, it's the zip code that's the transfer too, because I'm not in a black neighborhood. So is that part of what you're saying? But let me ask you another question. Is what you're saying about home ownership, because the chat's on fire. I was gonna say the chat's like, that ain't right. So let me just say this. Is what you're saying about home ownership that in terms of the benefit, is that the benefit is partially that it's the stability of like what you're going to have to pay every month, as opposed to the rent? They can up it and put money in their pockets for them, whoever the renter or whatever is, as opposed to you locking yourself into a certain amount of rent every month and them just not being able to do whatever they want to do, kick you out, and all your money's gone. Just explain that further, because the chat is understanding some things and whatever. I just want you to go in on that a little bit.
Well, when you run the numbers, having a mortgage, like one of the things that we kind of get caught up in is, oh my God, that's a 30-year loan. And we think about, God, where am I going to be in 30 years and all this other stuff, without realizing that that's a 30-year fixed budget. And 9 times out of 10, a mortgage is going to be less than what your rent is. And so the trick is not necessarily getting into a fixed mortgage situation. It's even entering the game, which you can't. So a lot of people, like let's say somebody's paying $900 in rent. The mortgage on that is probably $600, right? And you ask anybody who's paying $900 in rent, would you rather pay $600 a month for the next 15, 20 years? Obviously, they're going to say yes, because they know I can afford that, and it's not going to go up or down. It's not going to do anything. But the trick is, how do you get the loan in the first place in order to purchase that property so you have a $600 mortgage? And then what market are you in? Because that's not a lot of markets where ADOS lives. So, it's unfortunate, because then you have people like, nah, man, like, you're not going to get the appreciation, your house is going to go down and stuff like that. And I'm like, at this point, that's not even the game. At this point, it's getting into something that's fixed, because when some of these policies that are happening now start coming down, and some of that money is extracted out of the stock market and put into your neighborhood, your rent's going to go from like $900 to $25, and then where are you?
Well, let me just I'm gonna push back, because I'm just gonna push back a little bit. Okay, so okay, we black, we all black, everybody on the show black, everybody black. White people, hold your hands to your ears real quick. So part of what happens though, and let me just say this as a person who's been a renter too, part of what happens is not just that you want to rent, right? Is that you can't separate home ownership or rent from blackness. So what do I mean? I mean the ability to be mobile. So if my neighborhood goes down as a renter, I can for lack of a better word, I can get the hell on. Like as a homeowner, I have a lot of other things going on, because I'm probably not in a good neighborhood, and I've seen this firsthand. All of a sudden, it's a bunch of pit bulls running around, and you done got a house in this neighborhood, and there's pit bulls everywhere. They done killed your cat, all kind of stuff going on. And so you realize you hear gunshots all of a sudden, and it's harder for you to get out from up under this thing that you've gotten in, because that is what blackness is. We kind of try to isolate it out in terms of this faceless world without, multiple people living and break-ins and everything that happens. So what I would ask you is what is the value of being able to be mobile and navigate everything that blackness is versus home ownership? And I'll let you finish on that. Pit bulls, Rottweilers, robbers. They come break in your car window.
So, so that's an interesting question, because the reality is most people don't move that much, like out of their home state. So the idea of mobile is actually relative, right? So for me, mobile is like being 5 states over. For somebody else, that's being across the next, intersection or something where it's nicer. So if we're talking about that, you do have a mobility with rent, but at the same time, what you're sacrificing is the ability to actually possibly start to save. And you get into a scenario where, my neighborhood is going down, it's getting bad, let me move out of it and go somewhere nicer. and nobody should stay in a neighborhood that they don't feel comfortable in. I'm not saying that. But the sacrifice is that you never accumulate anything, not even a savings. We're not even talking about wealth at this point. So it comes down to what does, and in the real estate market, when a neighborhood shifts, and this is kind of why neighborhoods go down. Once a neighborhood has a certain percentage that is no longer a homeowner, so they will look at neighborhoods and they'll say, what is the percentage of homeownership versus rent? Once that reaches anything over 30% of the houses in that neighborhood are rented, it actually depreciates the neighborhood. So then you have to think of, okay, if I own and everybody else owns and our rental percentage is low, it actually is going to keep a lot of the value in your property. But then you have to say, okay, do the people live here? Do they care about the properties? Are they going to keep them up? So it's really it's not a question that I can answer per se because every market is different. But the reality is long term, it's always better to own, because the truth of the matter is, if your neighborhood goes down and you own that house, well, you can be the landlord and rent it out and go live somewhere else. So it's not necessarily that you're stuck with the house. If it's a house, you can rent it and it's yours. But I guess that's the only answer that I can have. Is it depends on the market that you're in and what your circumstances are. Is it better to leave with a little bit of money in your pocket, or to constantly rent and never have anything?
All right, Zuri. I appreciate you calling in. We're gonna have the conversation. Somebody said pregnant pit bulls. You see what I mean? Pregnant pit bulls is running the Negro streets. This is abominable. This is abominable. This is abominable. I saw what story was that? There's a news story I saw, and I didn't share it because I'm not gonna do that. I don't try to traumatize my people. But the man was walking home, and he took an alternative route home. He went through the woods. Never go into the woods. Anyway, he took a shortcut home. And I say that as a person who has gone into the woods taking a shortcut home. So don't let me lie. But he went into the woods to go home. And he got attacked by a pack of dogs. And they killed him. May he rest in peace. I'm just saying that, he got attacked by a pack of dogs in 2019. And he died. This is what so many neighborhoods are becoming. It's something. Pregnant pit bull, somebody called them devil dogs. It really is something. There's a lot going on we have to talk about. So anyway, I'm going to go to the next caller. Yeah, he got killed by a pack of dogs. When dogs, if you don't know this, let me just give you Yvette, the dog whisperer. When dogs get in packs, they change their total personality. You might see a dog one day and you can pet him on the head. If he gets in a pack of dogs, they're going to mess you up. And you can't outrun them. One time, let me just quickly. One time, I couldn't have been more than the third grade. I think I was in the third grade. I had on boots. So you can't really run in boots. I'm in boots. So all of a sudden, it's like two. It wasn't, we didn't have really Rottweilers back then. That day was Dobermans. Out of nowhere, these Dobermans come running at me. I'm 6. Somehow, though, through the grace of God, I outran them dogs. But what I'm telling you is that this is black life. So, going to the next call, 843. What's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind?
Hey, Yvette, it's Tobias out of Phoenix.
What's going on?
Man, finally got through, man. Good Lord, it's hard to get through on your show, man. But, I was listening to everything, and I wanted to say this last week, couldn't get through, but black people, this is what voting for anyone but Trump is like. You're not getting anything. This is what happens when you go with anyone but Trump. This is the policy you propose to get. Out here in Phoenix, the average home costs $266,000 the median home price. $25,000 ain't covering that. Then if you give me $25,000, still gotta pay the damn property taxes, the HOA fee. They charge you like $100 a month, depending where you're at. And how a lot of black people do, they say, well, I'm gonna move to this town, Maricopa. But guess what? Maricopa is like a 45-minute drive without traffic into downtown Phoenix. So if you gotta work there every day, you're probably looking at over an hour each way rush hour to just go to work. And then you want to do something on the weekend and go to Phoenix, Scottsdale, and drive another hour. So look how much time you're away and how much money you're spending to just move somewhere a little bit cheaper where they push us out to. Because we're not getting the prime real estate in these nice areas.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. You ain't lying. So what we got to do? What do we do? What do we do, fam?
Oh, I'm sorry. What'd you say?
I said, what do we do?
All I say is we gotta stop letting guys who rap in their underwear for free on SoundCloud and short guys who wearing their pajamas on this internet show. He's sitting in a bar stool. Those people speaking from us. And also, we got to understand that, like you say, politics is a business. We must not be afraid of making white people mad. They're already mad at us already for being here. They already shut us out of everything already. So what more can they do to us already? Trying to be nice to them ain't gonna work. And we have to, if these politicians want to use the black vote, we must demand they'll have concrete policies, but also reparations, cut the check first. Because I don't care about all this other stuff Kamala's mentioning. Because you cut us a check, we can buy our own houses and maintain our own neighborhoods. If you got the money. And then what people want to bring over housing Yvette, okay, I'm from Alabama, a lady from Georgia, you know this. When grandmama and them got that house, look how much that house cost to compare how much that house will cost now.
Yeah. But let me just you hit on something very important. You hit on something very important. Because part of the reason that we don't have anything now is because we're a contagion to wealth. Once you stop being a contagion to wealth, reparations transitions us from a contagion to wealth to actually having wealth. That changes the whole ball game. That changes your ability to lock us out. That changes whether or not you want to lock us out because we have the monies. So that changes everything. We have ownership. We have land. We have like real land. Like reparations changes the whole hierarchy. See, what we're trying to change is not just give us money so we can spend it on stuff. We want ownership. We want distribution. That puts us up here on the hierarchy. So that changes the game in every way possible. That's what people need to understand. But let me let you finish up. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem. And you know the thing is with money, look at how mad those white people got. Oh, and the black politicians also, when they talk about money. When they talk about, we'll give them land. Well, where the hell the land gonna be at? You really think these nice, good old white people are gonna give up that beachfront land in San Diego to us? They still need the money to develop the land. To give you the money for a home, we still need money to maintain the home, because if you don't pay those HOA fees or you violate those HOA fees, your ass is out anyway. So no matter what, you got to be able to keep up with the taxes. So that's more than just saying getting this home. And us black people got to start, I believe we have to just demand. We got to like crack. Remember that old Batman movie where the Joker said, in order to make an omelet, you got to crack some eggs? We got to crack some eggs here. Because out here in Phoenix, these Mexicans are eating. These Native Americans got casinos that's tax-free out here, and they're able to employ their own, and they're making bukus of money at these casinos out here, these hotels.
So what you saying, fam? So what you saying? If we had gotten our 40 acres and a mule, we'd be in it, wouldn't we? Like if we had in terms of what land was then and what it became.
Yeah, you're right. Because I'm saying this because I know you got to go. We'd be able to employ our own, because we know a lot of black folks in those nice STEM fields they told us to go into still can't find a job. But Kamala's people got a lot of jobs because they got a lot of tech here, and they out here eating off that too. If we had our own and that was not stolen from us, we'd be able to take care of our own and provide for our own.
Yep.
And that's what reparations would do, is give us the ability to support our own and pass something down to our kids. And oh yeah, by the way, I say this before I go, Yvette. Okay. And thanks for taking my call, by the way.
No problem.
Yeah, your mom and dad house can pass it down, but if you can't afford the house anyway, what's good is it to you?
And if you can't afford the upkeep. People, that's one thing people talk about.
Yep.
Well, the upkeep to a home is expensive. You got to be able to just go in there. Yeah, we doing all these carpets. We're doing all these appliances this week. This week we're redoing the basement. You got to be able to do that. They have put us in a position where we can't do it and said, oh man, look at your house. Your house is messed up. It's dilapidated. You did it. Who you think you're talking to? You put us in a position where we can't even maintain home and be home ownership. That's putting us in a position where we can't be American. Who do you think you're talking to? I ain't stupid. That's what you did. And then you put it back on us. Well, they don't understand how to keep clean. No, we don't understand how to get the money to take care of what you want us to take care of right there. That's what we don't have the money for the roof. Why? Because of the cost of blackness. We don't have the money for the dishwasher, the appliances, the floors. Why? Cost of blackness. Oh, well, see, that's why I don't appreciate. No, I don't appreciate it because there are no white people here. Y'all made it to where we're contagion of wealth, so they go over here. White people know I can't live next to them because they're contagion of wealth. You did that, though. White Americans understand that you benefit from that, and you did it. And you haven't undid it. That's the problem.
You're right, Yvette. And I'll say this one time I forgot to say this. I got, like about a year or so ago, I got sick and spent a week in a hospital. So I asked my landlord, hey, you know, I'm going to be a little bit late in this rent. I'm in a hospital. Well, they told me I got 2 days rent, I'm evicted. You know, and you know what happens if you get evicted? It's like your name is mud.
Yes,
and so these people are kicking you out, and it's on your record. And you're stuck. And I just want people to think about this stuff, like black people. The fine print. If at this housing thing, you notice white people are not pissed off at that proposal Kamala Harris made. That right there should tell you everything right there.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And people will tell you, as long as you don't have an eviction or a bankruptcy, we'll rent you. No eviction, no bankruptcy. Some people, I've been around the block. Eviction, no bankruptcy, we'll rent to you, right? So you got an eviction, that's it. What you gonna do? What you gonna do?
Live in a hotel.
There was a great article in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution about the number of people who are living in extended stays now because they either have an eviction or they don't have the last month's rent. Black life.
Yep. That's how they do it. And it's crazy how they do us, like how people aren't seeing this. But all we worry about is, well, the way Trump looked the country. Well, let me tell y'all this. Well, how the hell we look to the rest of the country and see how black people are being treated?
Yeah, you're right.
You can't pay your mortgage or your rent, and you working every day. But and I'm not saying that these people should not be in these camps or whatever. But yet they actually don't get their rights. Those same politicians came before said they would give them free health care. Well, you're free health care. You got a job, and you're an American citizen, and we built this damn country. Oh yes, plenty of us are going to debt because we can't pay the doctor bill. But yet we worry about what Trump's saying on Twitter.
Yep, you're exactly right, sir. You're exactly right. I'm gonna try to get to the next one, but thank you for calling in. It's always with you, sir. A very, very, very good call, and I appreciate it. That's what it is. I don't know how we don't think that's what it is. This is black life. And they built it this way. They designed it this way. This is not something that just happened. This is not a habitat. It's not a forest habitat. This is not a rainforest. This is not a protected habitat. No, this is a design space for us to eat the failure. I'm going to 760. What's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind?
Hey, this is Marlon from Oceanside.
What's going on?
Well, I was just saying about the Kamala Harris plan and Elizabeth Warren plan to high mortgage again. They're not even pretending to mess up this time. They're doing the same thing over, rehashing everybody. So if the sub basically put us on the ground and flatten us, if they do it again, it's just going to murder us. Not even like pretend if it's the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
And then like we're doing the same thing over. No one is even lying to us anymore. They're telling you exactly what they're going to do to you. They're going to tell you exactly what you're doing. They're going to say, come at me. And we're not doing, and you said the bourgeois. The bourgeois are the ones that freaking kept us in the same position since we got into this country, basically. I was thinking, because you had all of them talk about their respectability from when you were enslaved, and you had like free blacks talking stuff. Now you got them all free, and they were saying, "Oh, peonage. No, we can't do that. We can't go for reparations. We got to do this thing first. This thing only first." And then it gets pushed to the back burner. And gets pushed to the back burner. Like they're trying to do it right now. Get pushed to the back burner. But this is the only thing. Reparations is the only thing that will get us to the position we need to be citizens of the United States. And you said that.
Yeah, I agree with. Yeah, I thank you, Carl. I'm gonna let you go because I'm trying to get through some few more callers really quickly. But yeah, that's the only thing that gets us there. Like all of this other stuff, when you really look at the numbers and when you really look what has happened to us, and I'm not saying that like you got to pay us the 17 trillion tomorrow. That's not what I'm saying. We can, if you really mean well, we can get to a table and we can work this thing out. We can have a conversation, parlay, if you will. But you all aren't willing to do that. But that's the only thing that gets us out of this space that we're in, this poverty space, this garbage disposal space where we have been used as the shoes, and now something very different is happening, and you're trying to dispose of the shoes and replace the shoes with new shoes. We see you. The only thing that gets us out of that is reparations. And we can talk about how to do that. And I don't think people understand. People say, well, you're trying to suppress the black vote. No, we can actually, reparations is actually a plan. If Democrats were to just kind of sit down and figure something out to increase the black vote, you have turnout level you've never seen. Part of the reason people don't turn out is because it's like, what have you done for me in the last 2-3 decades? That's a problem. So I'm going to 903. 903, what's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind?
This is Patricia, and I'm calling from Texas.
Hey.
Awesome show tonight. I wanted to get in on this because the ADOS has to be the one to write the legislation. And I heard you say on a prior show that, you needed somebody to, or did we know anybody that knows how to write legislation? And I remember you showed a picture of it. So I want to introduce the Recovery Act, which is more than 200 pages of legislation for the American descendants of slaves from 1619 to 2019, which of course will cover everything, including the Civil War and Jim Crow. You know that writing the legislation doesn't happen in one or two settings, and it doesn't happen overnight because you have to write as you receive or research the data. But we do have over 200 pages that are ready to roll out. And my idea is the people that don't know what we need, we're going to have to submit this to whoever is the winner or whatever, because it started out in the Democratic Party as trying to find someone to beat Trump. But I stood up at the State Department in Texas and told them that's not what it's about. Our people want something besides you to just beat Trump. We want somebody that's going to give us something. And I heard you all talking about $17 trillion in our legislation. We've already got our attorneys. They have already opened up our account. We have 83 entities or actors, and we have 5 so far that have pledged to they're ready to start putting their money into our account to start paying people. It's $78 trillion. That's what we're asking for. $78 trillion. Somehow we've got to get on the same page because I don't know, we may be able to get reparations and we may be able to get recovery. But our plan is already written. I worked on it on Sunday of last week, which was July the 1st. And I have.
Well, I'm trying to get to a few calls, caller, but caller, send whatever you have to me at editor@breakingbrown.com and just put like our reparations plan or something in all caps. And I'll take a look at it. I'm trying to get through the calls, though. I'm trying to be fair because a lot of people are calling in tonight. 773. What's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, so this is Lucretia calling from Chicago. I called once before, and I actually left a comment under Tone's Richard Rothstein's interview related to this issue. I talked about how, like, the whole people the whole place-based policy versus the people-based policy. Like I said, it's in the comments. My name is Lucretia Fi in the comments.
Okay.
But I wanted to address a couple of things real quick. And I say this as a community organizer who majored in public policy. So I don't know anything about the housing stuff specifically from personal experience because my family doesn't own housing, a house or property in Chicago. But I want to say that it's time for us to get to, you know, what Sean in Dallas said. We have to go from application to education. And I'm not expecting everybody in the Breaking Brown, ADOS, Tone Talk family to be policy experts. No. But what we need to do is to make sure that the policy makes sense. And when the policy makes sense, we need to connect to it. And I think we need to express our grievance first and foremost directly to Kamala. We need to tell her campaign, we need to put thumbs down emojis and send her policy, you know, in Twitter or whatever on social media and let her know we're not feeling it. And I think we need to also, like, express that, like, correlate the information. We need to express that she's not saying, like you said, that anything different than what, well, actually, she is, her plan is whacker than Elizabeth Warren's
It really
plan.
is.
So
I'm sorry.
starting at the base.
No, I said you're right. I didn't want to say it, but it really is. It's a far less comprehensive plan and a less expensive plan. So it really is. But you're right. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Right, and we need to correlate that information and make those connections for people who not really watching politics close enough. Like, you're already doing that on your show, but for those of us who want to connect to people outside of your show, we have to correlate it to Elizabeth's plan and let them know that, you know, this is whack and this is, we're not feeling it. But in addition to that, like I said, each one needs to teach one. We have to educate people. We have to take what we're getting from your show, this amazing political education that you're giving to us, and we have to tell our family. And we have to connect it directly to what's happening in our city. So in Chicago, you know, the median, like, black people are at the bottom when it comes to median income or whatever. Like, we're at the bottom. We're at the bottom when it comes to housing. And we need to correlate that, like one of your callers is doing already on the show, just saying how much the housing costs in your area versus how much black people actually make. You know what I'm saying? And, like, let her know that her plan isn't cutting it. And finally, I'll say that we need to expand the movement, and we need to connect with people locally in real life. It's about to get real, y'all. Like, I don't know that if you saw this, because I'm not on Twitter. They ban me on Twitter, so I don't keep up right now.
Okay.
But, you got the movement for Black Lives now entering into this discussion of reparations. And, you know, to be fair to them, they did mention reparations briefly in some of their programs and stuff before, but they came out with a whole video on it. And I see them now trying to, you know, really take up this platform and follow up. But if you look at the policies that they're pushing, it's really not what you and Tone are talking about. They're pushing for a universal, like, all African lives matter sort of plan. They want to help all African immigrants with education. That was their number one policy platform on their website. So ADOS folks who are listening, we have to do the groundwork. We have to take this political education and apply it. We have to, because if we don't, there are other people who are trying to get in here and take over the conversation, and we can't let that happen, because for one, Black Lives Matter, and I say this as a person who is supportive of Black Lives Matter, you know, but I never was officially in an organization. I was just doing work alongside them. But Black Lives Matter helped even fix the police problem that they were focused on for 5 years. They have to come back with, you know, a address of why they failed with that before they can even try to get into the reparations conversation. Yvette and Tone and Verity got this, and we need to support them by doing our local work. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
I appreciate it, fam. Thank you for calling in. I always like it when local organizers and people call in, because everybody can learn from everybody, right? Especially people who've done this on the ground. Should be within the next couple of weeks. The site hopefully will be back up, and we'll be able to use that as like a hub. The Breaking Brown site, a hub to, like, have these conversations and discussions, as opposed to just having them on YouTube or people tagging me in random places I can't get to all the time, Twitter and Facebook and everywhere else. So hopefully we'll have a hub. So, but that's another thing. But I just hope that part of what we use that for is allow people who have, like, hey, I've been doing this on the ground, I got some advice. I've been here, I've done it here, you know, with the unions, or I've done it here with Black Lives Matter. I've done it here, and I can help here. An exchange of information. I know regions are different. Everything is not the same, but I still hope that we can share information with one another, you know, to make everybody's life easier in terms of organizing it within individual communities. I'm going to 323 323. What's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind?
Good evening. This is Nikki from Los Angeles.
What's going on?
I don't know. You know, I never knew what redlining was called per se. I'm just a critical thinker, so I used to always question why things were less valuable, when property was less valuable, and land was less valuable because it was a black neighborhood. Now, my head hurt right now, so I'm not even going to discuss that, but I'm going to give an example of what your caller was talking about. And one of the things that I'm afraid that Kamala and all the rest of these people with these plans that they talking about, that's not going to help us. In Los Angeles, I went to a community center. Now, I should put them on blast, my name, but I'm not. I went there because I needed some food. And they told me, this is a food bank. This is the community food bank. And they told me in order to get some food that I had to participate in a financial literacy program.
Okay.
I said, in the words of my mama, are they your boys? In order for you to be able to participate and get food, you have to participate in the financial literacy program. And so you have to come here so many times a month. I said, do that make sense to you? If I had some money, would I be here in the first doggone place?
Nah, you done spent all your money on Nikes. I know you done got a bunch of Jordans and then you can't buy ground beef.
No, but these are the type of policies and these are the type of shenanigans and the chicanery that will be coming out of these programs. And what you have to stop and say is what I said to them. Hear me clearly. I was hungry yesterday and I was hungry the day before, and I'm going to be hungry today because what you're talking about don't make no sense. You understand what I'm saying? And I've been on both sides of the fence as a social service provider.
That's kind of what Josh Post said, though, right? Like I don't have a problem with financial literacy, but I have a problem with people not first giving people finance. So the first you can't lock us out and then be like, you got all these pennies. What you doing with these pennies? I see a penny over there. No, I have no problem with literacy, financial literacy, but I have to have finances that go with it. And so, like, once we do that, like, if we had a reparation plan and once we started talking about disbursements, I would be totally in favor of a financial literacy program because we have finances. Let's talk about what we do with it. Let's talk about how we use it. Let's talk about how we group it. Let's talk about that. But, like, we have, like, to do that without money to do financial literacy without finances really has never made much sense to me. There's not enough. The main problem that we have is that there's not enough.
Absolutely not. But this is what they tell people as they make these policies, and all they keep doing is exploiting poor people. You understand what I'm saying? And so I said, listen, this the program you're running? This is actually the program that you designed for poor people, that you want me to come in here while my stomach is growling and I'm hungry and listen to you make me feel worse than I already feel by telling me how I need to be planning for something. I don't have a problem. I know how to make $1 out of 15 cents. I know how to make a pot of beans, every colored bean. You understand what I'm saying? And some rice, if I can get some rice. But this is the approach that they constantly are having, and they're constantly giving black folks. And at some point in time, the only thing they keep asking you consistently is, what foot do you want to cut off, your left or your right? And now it's we're going to cut both of your feet off. And I'll say, no, I want to keep both my feet. How about that? And the only way we're going to keep both our feet is if we get reparations. And
That's a good word to end on, caller. I'm cutting you off only because I want to try to get to at least one more caller before, or maybe two before we end the show. But I appreciate it. Yeah, they're trying to look you, and part of that too is just kind of weed you out to see if you can stick through it, right? A lot of people get embarrassed. They don't want to come back. I don't want to feel this way. And so part of that is like a weed out process. But I agree with you, caller. I'm going to try to get to a couple more callers, and then we're going to move on. 240-240, what's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind?
Hi, Yvette. This is Renee calling from D.C.
What's going on, Renee?
I called a few times. The first time I called was about Monique. I called another time after that. I've just been calling over time, but I've been with you, and now Tone for like 2 years or so. But I just wanted to go to the housing thing. The caller, the young lady before, maybe 4 calls before, she was basically, I want to say, talking on like a sliding type of scale, I believe, when it comes to what you need to have and where you need to, live, per se. So I'm just going to go on my background a little bit. And you may remember me. I went and started like a family business and did all these things with my family and educated them from things that I learned from you. So now we're 2.5 years ahead from there. And here I am with some information. So my grandma was picking tobacco at 6 years old before she went to first grade. And she was born in 1934. On the other side of South Carolina, my grandfather was also living in South Carolina in the same city. Of course, they didn't know each other at this time, but he was also on land where I saw a census report that shows everyone that they were paying rent on both sides of my family, where they lived at on the property. They were paying rent. They were not owning this land. And so you fast forward, and because of what I learned from you guys, I know that if I were a white woman, and I would have inherited benefits and wealth from those grandparents' lives. But because I'm ADOS, I kind of inherit the negative part of it. So I have 3 degrees. I have 3, black boys. I talked to you about that before. I got my first house in 2006, but then in 2008, the market crashed. But now that I know what I know, I shouldn't have gotten that house then. They were giving houses to certain people for demographics that were, kind of like predatory lending. Okay. The credit score was low. So let's fast forward to 2019. My credit score is high. Okay. I've been working at my job for 18 years. I have those same 3 degrees. I was denied in January a house. So I started making correlations between the grandparents and my life. And I got to throw in the 80s when my mom and my dad both were hit in different ways from the crack epidemic. So that's definitely a part of a lot of ADOS, whether we want to believe it, admit it, adhere to it or not. So then I'm going to go to Kamala Harris now. She can't tell me what to do, what I should do, how much I should want, anything. Like I said, I've been on my job for 18 years. What else did I write? I wrote notes.
Okay.
So now I live in an apartment, and I couldn't even get a 3-bedroom because I want to have more space for my boys, because they were saying how things have changed with the apartment requirements. So you can't get the house in January, you can't get a bigger apartment in February, so you're stuck in a 2-bedroom, which is, I'm stuck in a 2-bedroom. But I still have those things that I had in 2006 that allowed me to get the house. So my whole point, to kind of bring it back to what the other lady was saying about housing, is if you're going to move the scale, or if you're going to get that monopoly game and then you're going to change the rules in 2019, I tell ADOS people and a lot of people that have degrees like me, stop trying to play to their rules, because it's not working. I am for reparations. I am for ADOS. I'm for Black and Brown. I'm for Tone Talk. I will be there in October. I'm trying to figure out who I want to bring with me from my family. I'm also trying to figure out what I want to do in the community once I get back. So as of now, I've been working inside my family, educating them, and I think that's where we all should start. So
well, let me just say this, caller. Let me just say this, caller, to you and to the caller who I just heard from. So you basically told me, like, I'm in an apartment, they done changed the rules on apartments. I kept having a problem there. The other caller basically told me I'm being starved out. I'll eat beans, but I can't even get beans. Like, understand, like, I just want to salute y'all, basically, because to be politically engaged, and we have to do it. It's necessary. But I want to salute everybody who is politically engaged with that level of stress in their life. Not having enough food. I don't think you can be more stressed. In previous call, I know we had to move on to the next call, but I want to just say, listen, like, please do not be kind of dismayed or disturbed. Like, you deserve a medal. honestly. And you're doing what has to be done. I understand that. But just to be in this space and dealing what you have to deal with right now, that level of stress in terms of food, there's nothing more stressful than food and housing. There's nothing more stressful than that. Unless you, like, somebody dies that you love. There's nothing more stressful than food and housing. And to have to deal with that and still say, I am going to do what is necessary for my community. I'm going to engage people. And I understand what these people are doing to me by trying to act like I don't know how to manage my money when really the truth is I don't have no money. So salute to everybody, because y'all not the only ones. Salute to everybody who is politically engaged while going through everything that we have to go through as part of ADOS life. Salute to that. Just pat, if ain't nobody else patting you on the back, you got to learn to pat your own self on the back. So I'm gonna let you have the last word, Carl.
Thanks for that. And like I said, I've been learning so much from you. You're like my number one teacher.
Thank you.
My complete synopsis of what I said and what I've been learning all this time is that my granddad, being a Korean war vet, did not benefit him in the same way that my 3 degrees does not benefit me now. So I don't want my kids to say the 3 degrees and, oh yeah, I had a great granddad was in Korean war. I don't want them to say the same type of thing that I'm saying. So I'm going to fight until death to get things better for them.
Thank you, Carla. I absolutely appreciate it, and I appreciate the kind words, and I appreciate you. And I appreciate the fight that is in you, Carla. Thank you so much, because I don't think we all understand that that's what has to happen. Like, what you hear 100 years, I said it all the time, but you hear 100 years, what you going to do? You going to barbecue a meal, do? Right? So what are you going to do for the people? Like, part of the problem that we're suffering from is, like, after people got assassinated, we had a lot of problems. We had a lot of people who ran off. They tucked their tail and they ran off. So you have to be politically engaged. And something she said was so powerful. Like, even if we were going to do reparations, there was a great, and I think I put it in one of the newsletters, or I brought it up. You could just, she talked about her ancestors who didn't benefit from being in the wars in terms of the GI Bill. You could give her that. You could give her what he was supposed to benefit from, right? So what I'm saying is, you could give her his homeownership GI Bill that he was supposed to get as a veteran that he didn't get, or whatever. If you want to give the monetary value instead of the home, however you want to do it, you could do that right now. You could start off reparations as the GI Bill, like the people, the descendants of the people of the ADOS people who did not benefit, the men who went there who did not benefit, their descendants get X, Y, and Z. You can start it off right there. The fact that you don't do that lets me know that you don't want to. You don't want to. You don't care. And I don't understand how you want us to just care and care and care about your politics when you don't care and care and care about us. I'm going to my last call, 310. I'm coming to you. What's your name? Where you calling from? What's on your mind?
Hey, Yvette. It is Friday Jones. How you doing?
Pretty good. How about you?
I cannot complain. I could, but I won't. The caller before me, I am touched by her, and I hope that time will permit a better outcome for her, because, and for us all really, through reparations. But her call is frustrating. And I am in Los Angeles, and the city of Los Angeles had its budget day last weekend, and I went to budget day. And the city of Los Angeles has a budget of about almost $11 billion. So Kamala has this plan, and I have looked at 2 of our council districts, and I've looked at the income, and I've looked at the demographics and the makeup, and I've taken in all this information on these 2 council districts in the city of Los Angeles. And in both districts, half of people are below 50% of the median income. The median income in Los Angeles, $57,000. So half of the people are $28,000. They're living off of $28,000 or less. And I'm inclined to say half of those people are living on like $17,000. So you've got a significant portion of people in 2 council districts in Los Angeles that are living on between $17,000 and $28,000 in Los Angeles. The two council districts are council districts that were predominantly black. And the history of those neighborhoods are, these are the two sort of areas in the city, when Culver City, when Hancock Park, when Beverly Hills, when all of these other upper scale places were saying, okay, you black people, y'all can't live here. We have covenants that say you can't live here. We've redlined you down over there. You can live over here. These are two areas like that have historically been working class neighborhoods. You lay on top of these neighborhoods the immigrant population, and this is not to disparage the immigrant population, but what I want you to understand is immigrants, whether they were Latino, Asian, whatever, they were somewhat subjugated to the same restrictions that black people were. So in terms of those two areas are both just under maybe 50% of immigrant populations. And 60% of those people are undocumented. Mm-hmm. So you have this weight of where people could and could not live. You have a historical context that says, okay, you black, you can't live over here. And you have redlining and devaluation of property. The same little Spanish cute little house in these areas in West LA will cost over $1 million easy. So when you hear a plan like Kamala's, this is my difficulty. At budget day, the city of Los Angeles, Mayor Garcetti's deputy says to a room full of people that the city is expecting an economic downturn and is planning for it. If a city as big as Los Angeles with a $10 billion budget is planning for an economic downturn, why the hell are you giving out loans, 30-year loans? You're terming out 30 years to people who are at the bottom economically, but you're going to take them through something that I have to imagine your economic advisors is telling you is coming, just the same way as the economic advisors for the city of Los Angeles are telling this city that an economic downturn is coming. To me, I called it on Twitter today, I called it echo battle. I don't understand where they're getting this stuff from. I don't understand what I mean, it sounds good on the surface, but when you get into what's happening in these southern states, when you get into where you are in Atlanta and how, you know, these houses go into these contracts, mm-hmm. People, you know, they hiccup one time and they can never get up from under the contract. The contract never ends, or the people reclaim the houses. So I'm trying to understand, in what scenario does Kamala Harris think her plan is going to work? Because when here in LA, for them people making $17,000 to $28,000, they need their rent to be between $400 and $750 US dollars.
And I appreciate you calling. I'm gonna let you go because we're at about the end. But let me just say this, and I'm gonna say this to you. I don't think her plan was for it to work. I think Kamala's plan was for, like, I gotta give them a black agenda. Give me something. Like that's what people do. A lot of, you've ever been like, she needs something, like policy people. And I'm just gonna say this to you: if you're watching Kamala, if anybody tells you this, you're not being served by the people around you. I don't know where you got these people from, but they slow. Like, I don't even know who these people are around you. You would, like, now is a great time to retool your staff and bring in some new people around you. Because I don't know what you're doing in your life and what you remember and misremember, or what you're doing, but you don't, and you don't do it right, and the people around you are not serving you well. So, you know, it's you're competing with a lot of people. Biden, but you're also competing against Elizabeth Warren, who is a policy wonk. You got to get this together. You just can't go around here and be hollering and getting black women to yell at the Essence Festival. You're going to have to get serious about this. And what I will tell you is that the people on your campaign are not serious people. And they're not people who will ever be, not that I want you to get to the next level. I'm just telling you, I will want some next level policy from you. So in order for you to give me next level policy, you need a next level staff. And you don't have that. I can tell you that. I can tell you that from experience. You don't have a staff that is going to take you where you need to go and give the black community what the black community needs in terms of policy. They're incapable of doing that. They're capable. Your policy team is capable of copy and paste. And that's not good enough for where you want to go. That's not going to get you to the White House. That's not going to get you that's not going to get you out of the primary. It's not going to get you there. So I'm just going to let you know that. You need to fire everybody. Start with your campaign manager. Fire your press secretary. You need to fire a bunch of people. And there's nothing wrong with retooling the campaign so you can give people the policy that they want, because you're obviously not there. But you're not where you need to be. And I'm just telling you that. I don't owe you that. I don't owe you anything. Fam, please hit the like button before you leave. That was our last call. Please hit that like button. I would appreciate it. It costs you no money. Subscribe if you have not subscribed. Hit that bell if you have not hit that bell. Like ding. Hit that bell for me, so that you will get notifications when I am here. Please do not forget, on August the 1st, we will be reading How the Irish Became White. You see how I automatically just tried to throw in an Irish accent? It was real weird. I don't know why I do that. I do that all the time. People told me I was anti-everything. No, I'm just odd that way. So anyway, that is what is coming. That is what is coming, fam. Also, is there anything else that we do? Oh, you can also, like I said at the beginning of the show, you can go to donatebrown.com or patreon.com/ycarnell. All of that good stuff you can donate if you are so inclined. If not, go to subscribetobrown.com and enter your email address and give me that. Cost you no money. Hitting that like button before you leave cost you no money either. These are very, very inexpensive ways and free ways to help the show. So I appreciate it, fam. We will be back. Thanks again. Big thanks to Josh Poe for coming in here and explaining that to us. I really appreciate it. I really, really, really appreciate it. Hopefully we can have him again. But he really kind of broke down what is needed, what is necessary in terms of moving forward, moving forward in terms of home ownership and affordability, in terms of just having basic housing. Forget about all this accrual stuff. Kind of missed the moment. And that will require integration. Negroes be like, I want to live by myself. Whatever. So anyway, I appreciate that, fam. Please finish your libations. Enjoy the rest of your evening. And we will do this again. What is the day? Monday. We'll do this again on Wednesday. So I will talk to you soon, fam.